All right, today on the show, we have Brittany Simon from the Brittany Simon Group with Compass here in Chicago. Let me tell you about Brittany. Now, Brittany Simon is a full service real estate group servicing buyers, sellers, renters, investors, and commercial clients in the city of Chicago, as well as the western suburbs. She's a third generation real estate broker, following in the footsteps of mom, grandma, and her stepfather. Now, Brittany basically grew up in the real estate industry, seeing all the ins and outs of the business from her family. Now, she's been licensed for almost 12 years and cannot imagine doing anything else. Having lived all over the city and the suburbs, one of Brittany's specialties is that she has extensive knowledge of what makes each neighborhood special and can truly guide clients on what area may meet their needs best. Now, Brittany maintains the highest quality service, so her clients always feel well cared for and know that she has their best interests at heart. I'd like everyone to visit Brittany at her website, which is BrittanySimonGroup.com. And Brittany is spelled Brittany, SimonGroup.com. And also, please follow her on Instagram, which is at realtor.Brittany. Brittany, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. And thanks for also clarifying the spelling of my name. That's always been a tricky one. So I appreciate it.
Brittany's one of those names that has a lot of different possibilities for how it's
does. It absolutely does.
My first, I go by DJ, but my first name is Delphin. And that's a name that like nobody ever guesses the spelling of it right. No one's ever heard it really before. And then when they try to spell it, they always put a PH in there instead of an F. So growing up, DJ
myself.
Yeah, right. So, and I sort of it's not irony. It's just coincidentally, I always forget what coincidence and irony is, but coincidentally, Delphin with a PH is actually the Spanish word for dolphin. So it even makes more sense why people always put that in there. But we're not here to talk about my weird name. We'll talk about your name isn't weird. Your name is very normal and cool. But let's talk. By the way, Brittany and I went to college, not together, but we went to the same college. So we have a little bit of we were a little late to jump on the podcast because we were talking about Miami University, where we both attended some time ago. But Brittany, let's start all the way at the beginning of your real estate career, which I know has spanned 12 years now. How did you get into real estate and why? And I understand that, of course, it's part of your family.
Sure.
But yeah, let's hear about 3 generations and all of that.
Yeah. So I mean, having my mom and my stepfather being in the real estate industry. So when I was even in high school, my stepfather is also a builder. So he had at one point built a few homes on the block we were living on. So before you had to be licensed to basically do anything, I would be sometimes sitting in an open house straight down the street because they needed extra hands on deck. So I was kind of just, going into these new builds. And, when I was even younger, sometimes my mom would bring me with to showings or open houses or what have you. So kind of always seen it, those behind the scenes. And then when I graduated college, actually, or kind of unfortunately, we were going through, a recession. So that made things a little tricky. And coincidentally, at the same time, they were, I believe, changing some of the rules to become licensed. So before things, I think it was going to become harder, something along those lines. So I just went ahead and got my license right out of the gate. But I was not necessarily sure that's the path I wanted to go down on or in, especially just having family members in it and, kind of wanting to forge my own path. So
what did you study in college, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I studied actually broadcast journalism, ironically, and I was an English lit minor. So I really thought, I really wanted to dive deeper into that. Moving back home to Chicago, it's obviously not a huge market and, kind of California is where a lot more things happen. So I actually did get a couple of job offers in California, but at the time I wasn't sure that's really where I wanted to go. That was kind of a big leap. And not to mention the salary I was being offered was not really, I think commensurate with housing costs in California.
Right.
So I tried a little bit harder in Chicago. So I was kind of doing some other things independently and kind of with some other, I guess, techie type start things, startup,
Sure.
whatnot. And then I just really started needing to make money. So I got into ad sales, and from ad sales, I also kind of got into some startups, and then kind of just fell into sales. And through that, that led me to event planning, kind of on a higher level in the ad sales community or in that job role, which was interesting. And I really did like it. But I felt that, corporate structure was still just kind of feeling like it wasn't for me. So then I was kind of thought I'd be at this other job for a lot longer, which is going to be delving a lot more deep into the event planning arena. And it was just kind of all over the place. And I kind of thought, I wasn't still being able to be creative, which I felt like was something that I really had a calling to do. And so I finally decided, if not now, when? Let's make the leap. So I finally made the leap into just full-time real estate sales. Although I also did I worked at a bar actually while I kind of got up and running, because I did have a mortgage. So I needed to be sure I can pay my mortgage. And then, I really just hit the ground running. I started just in my mind, I never, even having family in the business, never realized how hard it actually is to build a business from the ground up. There's no one who could really, I guess, help you do that. And it takes time. So I just took every lead I got. I was prospecting like crazy, telling everybody I knew, actually, at my bar job.
I was
Really,
going to ask about that. Did any of the patrons, the bar patrons, whether they were regulars or people just passing through, were you ever somebody who was, I don't, and I guess it depends on where you work and what's allowed, but were you ever like, hey, by the way, here's your kamikaze or whatever drink.
yeah,
I was trying to think of like the most ridiculous drink I could think
yeah.
of, but whatever, here's your beer, here's your whatever. Hey, by the way, this is, I do this as well, but I'm also a realtor. Did that ever come up, and did that ever turn into leads for you?
Absolutely. Actually, all the time. And I worked at this bar in Lincoln Park, actually called Prost. It
Oh,
was,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was
So,
a,
just pull back the curtain a little. I'm
yeah.
actually in Lincoln Park right now. So that's where our office is. So yes, I am familiar with Prost. Yeah.
So it was great. And actually at the time, which was kind of ironic, there was actually like a handful of us who were actually transitioning into different careers in life and trying to find like our path. So it was actually really enjoyable to go into work. And actually really quickly, there's kind of some turnaround. So I came into like kind of one of the lead like servers. And so I was on all the time. So I was like, if I have to be here a lot of time, I am going to try to make the most of it. So I actually would have a lot of people. I had in my little, I guess, I don't know, my little server apron, I had a stack of cards. I was handing them out like crazy. But also the other people that I was working with, I actually, did some things with them. And some other people that came in said, hey, do you want to work on my team? It wasn't really what I wanted at the time, but I felt like I had options. So it was really nice. And I will say, I probably only worked there for, I want to say, maybe 5 months until I felt like, okay, I really just need the time to dedicate to this. And I felt from a financial standpoint that I was ready. So it was really interesting, but I had worked in the service industry a little bit during college. So I also felt like stepping back into it really was probably one of the best roles to kind of really prepare me for going into real estate full time, because it is so, customer service forward. You really have to deal with, so many different personalities and so many different types of situations. The emotional of it all is high all the time. So I feel like that, especially at, maybe 2 a.m. on a Saturday night when you have, your section full and people are getting a little rowdy, it was, really good to help me hone those skill set.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. I mean, I was just thinking about these skills that you sort of either developed or had in your history, which is, hey, I have a family who's into this, and I was sitting at showings when I was younger, and I've been around realtors, and it's certainly 3 generations. And then I studied broadcast journalism in college, and which of course I think teaches a lot of skill sets, but most importantly, be able to present and be able to talk,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
interpersonal communication, or even just monologue, like presentation style, one-way communication sometimes is great. And then also the ability to then do customer service when working at in food service and bar stuff. It's like, that's a true customer service position. So all of those skills together, to me, and we haven't talked anything about, well, of course, growing up with family that was in real estate, you probably had, some knowledge of real estate in general, but, that all can be learned, over time. So I think, those skills make perfect sense why you would go into real estate.
Yeah. And, I always kind of, I guess, against it in a way, just because it was like my family was in it. That was their thing. I wanted to find my thing. And I feel like almost what I wanted to do, like broadcast journalism, this event planning that I really fell into, that I loved, it was all really creative and allowed me to kind of just come up with things, be myself, not necessarily fit into like this little corporate box, I guess. And real estate really allows me to do that, talking here with you today. Marketing listings, trying to get new buyers, social media, everything you really need to do to kind of brand yourself even, has allowed me to pull in all from all these areas that I feel like I do have expertise in, and kind of group it all together. So actually, I fit better than I thought. Which is ironic because having not ever wanted to do what everybody else did and falling into it and really feeling like it is my passion, because I do, love real estate itself. I love design. I love architecture. I love just neighborhoods and knowing the ins and outs of them. And, just being able to go into some of these awesome places. It's awesome. It really is. And it's no day is the same. Whereas sometimes with that corporate structure too, I was finding myself pulling away and just felt like, okay, from 8:30 to 5:30, this is what I do. And then you can turn it off. Whereas real estate's on all the time, but I don't feel like I'm, my personality is being sucked out of me in a way.
Right. I used to work in corporate, the corporate world. And I consider myself a creative person as well. And so I was a bit frustrated with the inability, unless you specifically, once I got into marketing specifically, then I was able to express myself, but I was in non-creative roles for some time. And so I used to have to do things outside of work to fulfill that creative sort of itch. And now again, I'm not a practicing realtor, but I get to work with my creativity inside of real estate. And I think what you're talking about is just taking all of these skills that you enjoy and that you're passionate about, and putting them together. And maybe you're working later hours than the person that clocks out from their from their corporate job at 5 or 6, but it's probably more fulfilling and enjoyable, and you're helping people buy and sell homes. I know it's not always easy. In fact, it's never easy, but especially right now. And I know that's going to be a focus of our talk today, but back to just being fulfilled and having sort of maybe I'm replying to a text at 9 p.m. at night, but I'm choosing to do that and I want to do it and it's still fun and, and all of that. And it seems like most of the people I would say everyone I've interviewed on this show over the years kind of has like, they really like it. And I always just take it for granted that we all like our jobs. And I always forget that many people don't. And it's very sad. And I don't have, I have empathy for people who, cause I've had jobs that I didn't like as well. And I don't think it's like, well, you just quit and find something you love. And it's like, well, maybe, but not everyone can do that. But I think if you can find a place where you're happy at work, boy, that makes life a lot better. And so let's talk about something that is very difficult right now, which is of course working with buyers. And we're still in a, despite what the news headlines are saying, we're still in a pretty low interest rate environment.
Yes.
Lots of people with a lot of spending power are in competition to try to buy properties that are at exceedingly high values, and just people making decisions sight unseen. And so we have almost 800 realtors at our company here, and that's our most common question is, what do I do to get my offers noticed? So just perfect timing because I really wanted to talk about that anyway. But but I'm not out there in the field doing it. And you are. So I'd love to hear your advice about what's been working for you, maybe also what doesn't work or what you
Sure.
see not working,
Yeah.
and any advice that you have for our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it also comes down to, and I always, check in with my buyers first, hey, when there's a will, there's a way. And I know the strategies that we can win, but it also has to depend on, are they willing to go there? Because not everybody is. So I think it's also important to understand, really the goals of your clients and let them choose. Because sometimes maybe, after the analysis, the numbers don't really make sense. But if this is every single thing they want and there's nothing else out there and they're going to be in this home for the next 10 plus years, I mean, then maybe it's really time to go for it. So I would say one of the things that I see working out there, I think most people are using escalation clauses, and if you're not, you definitely should, or also called an escalation writer. And what that
Can we define what that is, just in
yeah.
case anyone listening isn't familiar?
Exactly. What an escalation rider or clause is it really allows a client, and I almost say, to kind of go to their max without initially going to your max unless you have to. So I still always recommend going strong on that number on the contract itself. But an escalation rider can then say, hey, let's say just make the numbers easy. House is listed at 475, but they'll go to 500 because it's worth it and they want it. And they already have multiple offers. So, but they'll go to 525. So on the escalation rider, we have a max price of 525. And we also have an ability to say they will go X amount over the highest competing offer. So let's say $1,000. So if a highest competing offer then comes in at, let's say, 510, well, then the person who used the escalation rider for 525, it would be 511, and they wouldn't even go to their max. So it allows them to almost not bid over yourself. I will say sometimes that's making it tricky in today's market is if a house has, let's say, 30 offers and 25 of those offers are including escalation riders, sometimes listing agents are asking for them to be withheld, because it gets too crazy. And I can understand that, where the numbers are just really nuts. But I will say, I have talked to some listing agents too. And sometimes if you don't ask and they're not telling you not to use it, you can use it. Some people are asking and they're saying, I'd rather you not, no. But, if you have a good number on there that's going to kick it in, there's a good chance you're going to win. So I try not to ask unless it's clearly noted that they're not accepting them, because I wouldn't want the offer to not be considered, but I don't know why they wouldn't consider a great offer, if it's right there in front of them.
Do you worry that the listing agent might miss the fact that there's an escalation clause in your offer? In other words, how do you make that really evident so that, again, in the case of getting 30 offers where I know escalation clauses are quite common, but let's just say they weren't common, or you would just be worried, gosh, I'm only still going up to 490, where really we could go all the way to 525. I just want to make sure that the agent, are you calling the listing agent and going, hey, I know you're getting a lot of offers, just FYI, this has got an escalation, or are you just assuming that they'll review that in the documents?
So unless they don't say that they're not accepting them and there is an understanding that they are accepted, I usually always do call the listing agent just to find out, hey, also what are they looking for in terms of a close date? Do they need a lease back or a post-close possession? What is, and I also do ask too, you never know if you ask what they will say. So I also say, hey, what are you seeing things coming in? I just did this for a multiple offer situation. I said, anything you could give me to help. And he said, I'm not going to tell you numbers, but what I will say, one, they're strong. Two, a lot of people are waiving inspections or going as is. And a lot of people who are going above list price or including escalations are including appraisal waivers or appraisal gap guarantees. And my client at that point, we did not have an appraisal gap guarantee. So we did include that. And with that escalation to go back to your point of how to make sure it's being included, I always send everything, all the documents over in one PDF. So I include that right before the offer themselves, so they can't miss it. And then in my email summary over to the list agent, I always write that out as well. So hopefully they're reading it, but it would be hard to miss. And I will say also with the escalation writers and clauses, sometimes clients worry, well, how do we know they're telling the truth? Well, there is at least in the one I use, there is a section that says they have to show us the highest competing offer at contract acceptance that made that clause kick in. So we know that they're telling
Very
the truth.
smart.
And it has to be an offer that's kind of, it can't be another offer that has a home to close or home to sell
Sure. It's got to
contingency.
be apples to apples.
Yeah, exactly. So
that's really smart. So if anyone just missed that, what Brittany does is at closing, if the escalation clause is being utilized, her concern as a fiduciary for her client is, I just want to make sure that the offer that we just beat is a real offer. So once we go to closing, I need to see that you had a legit offer here. Otherwise, who knows, maybe somebody might take advantage of the fact that
and you'd hope not because of ethics and everything. But I mean, also for the buyers are usually nervous too. So that also helps them like, okay, trust this process. And I would always expect, the best from other agents. So, and I do have some clients too that say, well, let's use one right off the bat. And that's not really a good strategy to use unless there are multiple offers and they're calling for highest and best. Because if not, if you're just submitting it, they don't have other offers yet, they're probably going to wait until they get other offers. So that will go into effect. So at that point, you should just probably offer stronger initially and wait to see if they then do call for highest and best.
I wonder if any MLS in the country, and maybe I'm just not understanding why this doesn't exist, but just to get off topic for a quick sec, because I think it's an opportunity for, unless there's some compliance reason why this shouldn't happen, why MLSs don't have their own system for receiving offers and being able to categorize them, and that the list agent would say, check mark, I showed this to the seller, and that way the agent would get maybe notified it has been presented to the seller.
Yeah.
You would think that, and maybe smarter people than me have said there's a good reason why we don't have that.
Yeah.
But it just seems like in this environment, I imagine things have just got to fall through the cracks sometimes too. And I'm sure, when 30 offers come in, the list agent is, overwhelmed, and phone calls and texts and emails from buyer's agent. And so I just, the fact that you call the list agent and just make sure that they, received it and that they understand.
Yes. And I always include either on my email or on my a text, whatever it is, like, please confirm receipt. And if I do not have a confirmation, I follow up, because that's, at least, okay, they got it. Because sometimes, an email could be missed. So I definitely want to make sure they can they not open the PDF? What is it? I want to make sure that they got it. And especially they got it before the deadline. But I will say some people, in this market are throwing out crazy numbers. And for like a finance deal, I've actually talked to some list agents who said, for numbers that are kind of way crazy, they sometimes throw those ones out because
it won't appraise out.
Yeah, exactly. So you kind of have to also be realistic here. And I also think if you had a conversation with a list agent prior, they might say, hey, you know what, if you are going to do that, it'd be a really good idea to include an appraisal guarantee or gap of some sort, a writer.
Yeah, I think that's really, really smart. And I know it's funny. It's like the concern of the seller is, hey, it's great that we got 100,000 over asking, but is the buyer going to come to the table with $30,000 cash? Because that's what they're going to need, and so if you have that gap, sort of, honor, or that gap sort of promise, then it, so that's really smart. So escalation clause, gap coverage, and then how, I'm curious on, and the answer really should be it doesn't matter, but we're interpersonal humans. Connections important to us. We like people that we like, and we tend to treat people better that we like. I'm curious how important relationships are and of course you can't be friends with everyone. We have 46,000 realtors in the Chicagoland area, but I bet you run into a lot of the same people over and over again. And how important is it to be and again, the easy answer is, well, yeah, you should be friends with everyone. But
Yeah.
does it ever move the needle for you? Do you ever feel that like it probably helps me, if I have a good relationship with, the listing agent, maybe it helps, if two offers come in that are similar, maybe they're going to choose mine because they know me and they know that I would only bring a legitimate offer to the table. Like, how important are those relationships?
Extremely. And I think not only for the fact is that the person, even the agent on the other side, that, okay, I worked with them before, or I like them, or at the same time, if maybe there's a hiccup within the transaction itself, I have confidence in them that they will help move the needle along so we can, work to a completed transaction. Whereas, they're not going to get caught up in the emotionality of it as well and take it personal, because too often I think agents take their clients' stress on and make it personal with the other agents. And I always try to focus on, we all want the same thing here. We all want it to close. Nobody wants to work for free. Your clients want to sell a house, or my clients want to buy a house, or vice versa. And we all want the same goal. So, I've actually been in some pretty intense and crazy situations. And I always try to keep my cool, even when maybe I'm not receiving it on this other end from the agent. But I think, this is not going to help. And especially before you're have an offer accepted, I think it is so critical, because I think, I'm on both sides as a listing agent and as a buyer's agent. And on the listing agent, you're getting inundated with, calls and questions. Did you get this? What, showing requests, your phone's blowing up. So sometimes, you have to have a little patience on the buyers as a buyer's agent to realize, they are, fielding so many calls and text messages trying to answer everybody's questions. So if it takes a little bit longer, just try to give them a little bit of grace. And on the list agent's perspective, as a buyer's agent, I'm trying to get my client to win. We're probably, they've maybe lost a few times. We're trying to get them in. I want to try to know, what should we have in the offer that might make us win? What are the sellers looking for? So it kind of goes both ways here. But I think too, if you could kind of just remember that everybody is working overtime right now and is trying their best, I think it
And
goes
is
a long
stressed.
way. Yeah, because I've actually been hearing of some agents doing some crazy things. And I think to them, like, you're not starting on a good foot. And I would be nervous to have my clients accept an offer where the agent, their buyer's agent, is already kind of acting a little nutty and, taking things up a notch. And I actually, my clients actually lost a deal over the weekend to multiple offers, but things went crazy. But it was okay because my clients actually, given the numbers, this was going to be the most expensive sale in this particular town thus
Hey,
far.
you don't want to be the most expensive sale in a town.
And this was not their number one town. So closer to the list price or over, they were willing, but much further over. And with that appraisal gap, they're just like, it comes to a certain point where that amount of money, we could wait and maybe be in the town we want to be in, which I think, so again, it's always important to know, your client's true goals, because you never want them to end up winning a situation and they actually kind of feel disappointed that they won. You want them to be
Right.
happy that they
Sure.
won.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I have a question. So when you
Yeah.
first are working with a buyer, before you've taken them out, how do you prep them, assuming that they are not familiar with the craziness of today's market? What are you saying to them to let them know about the urgency, about the creativity that might be involved? What's the education process look like? Because I imagine that's got to be a huge component for you
Yes.
just to keep your clients from freaking out, and
Yes.
because they're going to freak out anyway. But
Yeah,
I'm curious on what you say to them to sort of prep them for the environment that we're in.
definitely. Well, the good part is, in a sense, that most people right now are aware that it's a little bit challenging right now for buyers. So I think one of the most important things that we talk about is their timeline, because having flexibility is pretty much essential right now in terms for sellers, because a lot of sellers need time themselves either to
Yeah.
find something, or a lot of sellers are relocating, or some are building, or some are relocating and building in that new state, and they need a little bit of time. So I think knowing that also, you might close and it's still going to be a little bit of time. So having flexibility is really key. And if you don't have flexibility, maybe let's try to find some options where we can try to work that in somehow. And the next thing really, going over what it takes. And what it takes is, having strong financials, and not everybody has that. And if you don't, there still is a way, but we probably want to be looking a little under than what you're actually qualified for. Because if we're looking around your max and that's really the type of home you want to be in, and you don't have extra padding outside of that, then we're probably going to be in more situations that we lose than we win. But sometimes, I will say there are certain areas that still are not always getting everything over ask, and some pricing that started too high that now there's some wiggle room, or, sometimes when properties have a little bit more time on market, there is the, hopefully the ability to negotiate a little bit. Or so, sometimes those are the things that I'm telling clients that we need to look at, not the ones that are just coming on the market, because they're probably hoping to get multiple offers, or they're probably more hoping to get the price that they listed at. They're hoping not to negotiate. So the properties now that have been on the market for maybe 30 days plus, the market has kind of spoken that I don't think that that is the price they're probably ultimately going to get. So those are the properties we should probably be looking at. So it really kind of depends on the buyer and what their financing is. Do you have conventional? Are you cash, or are you FHA or VA? And, unfortunately in our, people who are not putting as much down are looked at as not as strong as buyers, even though that's not always the case. And there's many reasons you're not putting as much down. And also, given that rates are so great right now, sometimes your money is doing better in other places. You don't want to pull it out, but there is something that a lot of people feel that there is strength in the amount you're putting down. And sometimes that's true. So it's a lot of things that you want to.
It is really interesting. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was
No.
just as you said that, it really did occur to me. Like, I have a very, I kind of just got lucky accidentally with timing when I bought a place, about a year ago, and I just kind of got lucky with rates. And, it is funny. Like I had to put a significant amount down, but if I could take that cash and just beat under 3% return,
Yeah.
which is pretty not that difficult to do, with a not as much risk.
Yeah.
I do understand people wanting to put as little down as possible. At the same time, it's nice that you can lock in these rates, which are probably now hovering around the 4% range.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think so. You're doing a lot of education. I imagine are you having the conversation with your buyers about speed? In other words, we're going to go see properties. There's going to be some that you immediately know that you're interested in. Maybe you're not sure if you want to put an offer in. Do you give them sort of any guidance around timeline? In other words, hey, in the past, you could maybe sit and think about it for some time. It's a different environment today. Or, how are you educating them around the speed to decision?
Absolutely. So speed is incredibly important. And especially if something just hit the market and I say it's great, you love it, it seems priced well, other people are probably going to think so too. So I always suggest not waiting. Let's go in immediately. Or if there's offer deadlines. So now sometimes homes are hitting the market and right off the bat, they're saying if multiple offers, they will be due Sunday at 5 p.m. So there's that expectation that they have a pretty good idea they are going to get multiple offers. So I try to, absolutely. If you're interested and it checks a lot of your boxes, the price is right, there is really no room to wait.
I was just with a bunch of my friends at the Chicago Association of Realtors. We serve on a committee there, and we were out doing a thing last weekend or 2 weekends ago, and we were laughing. And again, I'm not a practicing agent, so I'm always like the last to hear about this. But we were talking about this idea of in the MLS putting, and I imagine this happens all over the country, and I'm not exactly sure why we've all decided that highest and best offers need to be in by Sunday at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
When nothing happens between then and Monday morning. Why not Monday morning at 11 a.m.?
Totally.
Like, can we all agree as realtors, like, let's the right thing to do for our clients. I mean, 5 o'clock on a Sunday is a bad deadline.
I
Like that is,
agree.
as far as like, that's like a day where people are well, realtors are working, everyone else is relaxing. It's not a great day, in my opinion,
Oh, I
and again, as a
agree.
marketing guy, I'm always thinking like, give your clients the best opportunity. And I'm not saying for anyone who does highest and best at 5 o'clock, do 5 o'clock on Sunday and it works for you, great. But I have heard so many realtors pull me aside and go, can you believe realtor? Like, why are we doing this to ourselves? And I'm just, it is funny. That's the environment we're in now. So,
Yeah,
this education of your buyers, it's like, hey, we got to make a decision quick.
yeah,
We have to have all of these sort of creative, ancillary sort of conditions,
yeah.
set up. And then we're just going to kind of see what works and what doesn't.
Yeah. And, I also talk about obviously escalation clauses or writers, and the ability to prep them also that there's a lot of sellers who need time, either, as a lease back or post close possession, or just are extending because the expectation of when you do that as a post close possession or lease back is that the seller is now going to pay you rent. But now some sellers are even trying to push that as much as possible, so they pay as little as possible. So having longer close dates, I think, and if I'm not mistaken, I think 90 days is about as long as a lender will lock without having to extend that rate lock position. So then it's kind of a detriment to buyers because now you might have to pay more to keep that same rate you initially locked at. So just kind of prepping them that sometimes though that is what a seller is looking for, and or these reverse home to buy contingencies
Yeah.
where it's just crazy time. So again, having that flexibility but knowing that there's different things going on. So the as much as we can try to make things easy for the sellers and kind of give them what they're looking for, that just really makes you come to the top of their list, because not everybody can. People are under deadlines. Other people need to be in by a certain time. So hopefully that kind of weeds out some of the competition too. But I will find, more than likely right now, most buyers understand that and are knowing that's part of basically playing ball. You got to give the sellers what they're looking for, or else you don't stand a chance, even despite what the number is, because they have to find something else.
It's so funny that you funny only because it makes perfect sense to me as a non-practicing agent that you contact the listing agent and say, hey, what are you looking for? Or tell me what you're seeing, because we want to be competitive and we want to get
Yeah.
your seller the exactly what they want. I I would imagine most buyers agents don't do that. And it's the same thing with, like, I recruit realtors. That's my job. So often I talk to realtors all day who work at most of the time they work at other firms. And I say,
Yeah.
oh, well, if you're thinking of maybe switching, the first question, and it took me I've been doing this for 12 years. This is kind of embarrassing because I knew better, but I didn't put it into effect until several years in. And I really encourage everyone listening to do this. But again, you're not recruiting realtors, but what I do is I say, hey, before we get started, and I start telling you about why our firm's the greatest firm on the planet, which of course nobody really wants to hear anyway. I'll say, hey, what are you looking for? If you're going to switch from
Yeah.
XYZ firm to another firm, like why? Like, what are you looking for? What's important to you? This is just sales 101, and it's the same thing that Brittany is doing with her with these listing agents, is calling them and saying, hey, I can throw an offer at you, but I want to know what your sellers really want, because then I can maybe give you a better offer as a result
Yeah.
of that. And also you have a fiduciary responsibility to your buyer. And
Yeah.
so it all of this is, but it can be tricky, right? Because
Yeah.
getting the listing agent on the phone is not easy.
Yeah. It's
So
true.
how do you have to be very persistent um, with that, or how is that, can that be challenging to even get in touch with a listing agent?
I will say sometimes it is. Sometimes it is, but I will find, the great agents know they have to answer the phone, and that, to get the best price for their sellers and for them to help them choose the right buyer, that it would most likely make sense to have that conversation if they're getting that call, because it also will help, in my opinion, for the transaction to stay together. Because if the buyer didn't realize that the seller needed this much time, that could be a deal breaker. And then you pick that offer and it falls apart only to go back to market. And now what if 10 of those offers you first had, now you only have maybe 2, and they're not as good as the ones you originally had. So I think it's really important for the agents to talk if that's something that they both do.
Yeah, it is. And it's just, I really, it's funny. Buyers agents, are stressed because they're trying to rise to the top of the pile of offers. List agents are stressed because they're dealing with
Yeah.
all of the communication,
Yes.
and there isn't a centralized sort of way of distributing offers. And I was saying that earlier, like somebody really should create some sort of system that we all agree to use, and then
Yeah.
maybe streamline it just a bit. And I'm sure that will likely never happen, but this idea of understanding the other person's pain, I think, is really important. Because and Brittany's sort of said it without saying it, is reaching out and saying, hey, I'm not just going to throw some offer that, because I know you're getting a lot of just offers thrown at you.
Yeah.
And, I want to get a little bit more specific about what you need to make this close. I would also like to hear, what trends have you seen? Because you work in the city and the suburbs, and I know that we
Yeah.
we have listeners from all over the country, and rural and urban areas, of course. Just generally speaking, are you seeing a migration? And I know during COVID, we saw it here in Chicago, a bit of a migration from the city out to the suburbs. Are you still seeing the movement there, or are we seeing a return to more urban environments, or is it just too tough to tell because inventory is so low right now?
We are seeing a return, and it's interesting, but the city is, in my opinion, behaving different than the suburbs. So the rental market in the city is insanity. I will say, really
Yeah.
on par to what we're seeing in terms of the suburbs with buyers. But so the rental market's crazy pretty much everywhere. Because I do believe that now that some offices are not maybe requiring people to be back 5 days a week, but maybe it's 2 to 3 times a week. So there's still now needs to be a present back. And maybe people are also, I feel like, switching jobs and finding jobs now that they got used to not being home, and now they're relocating. So they're renting because they're not sure how long they're going to stay. But with that said, that I do see like a return back. And I will think that I'm seeing that high rises are having a slower return. I'm not necessarily seeing the market be crazy for them right now, as in opposed as I think West Town, in my opinion, is nuts. Things are going really quickly. Whereas, I think you can get a bit of a deal in a high rise right now if that's something you wanted. So like areas like the Gold Coast, it's taking a little bit longer to recover. I truly believe they will, because the location's phenomenal and you're right by the lake, and you're in many cases walking distance to, the loop to work. But it's taking a little bit of time, so it's behaving a little different. And in my opinion, in the surrounding suburbs, I feel like they're all pretty much nuts right now. Unless somebody, I think, really missed the mark on pricing. Most of them are, you're getting multiple offers in a very short amount of time. So it's interesting, and many different price points. So I'm seeing it across the board. Whereas, it's almost, if you're moving to the city, it might make sense to maybe buy something you might have the ability to rent if you don't think you're going to stay, or you might switching a job in the future. So then at least, because some of these rent arounds they're crazy. I in my mind, of course, I'm like, why pay that when you could just buy for less? But I get it, the uncertainty of not necessarily knowing you're going to stay and not wanting to lock yourself in just in case, I guess, the market changes, which, there's a lot of people that feel like it might. I don't think we're going to see some type of mad rush, like if there is some type of correction or balancing that comes, but because the comps are kind of where they're at, and it's going to take a little bit for that to, fade down, I guess. But
yeah, it actually might make sense, although I'm sure very few people would ever do this. But right now, if you're living in a place that's appreciated substantially, selling it and then renting for a few years until the market recorrects, is not, it's not a bad idea per se. But
Yeah.
practically it's not a very easy thing to do
Yeah.
either,
Yeah.
especially when there's children and there's schools and
Yeah.
there's, the space, and it's not something that, but as a marketer, I love the idea about bringing those. I love the concept of bringing that to your client, not because they're going to do it, but just because it makes you. I love people who bring ideas, and
Yeah.
this is kind of what we're talking about. You're talking about bringing creative ideas to the offer table,
Yes.
and this can be the same thing. I think there's a huge opportunity right now for people who are listening who maybe aren't as busy, with clients. This is a great time to
Sure.
reach out to every single person who owns a home and say, hey, let me just out of curiosity, I bet you're curious what your home's worth right now. I'm going to
Yeah.
run a little quick comp for you, and whether or not you're going to move, like, of course that's up to you, but I just want you to know, because it's something that I think the vast majority of us outside of the industry never think about until we're ready to move. Then we
Yeah.
go, I wonder what my home's worth. But we all it's like looking at your stock portfolio, or your securities portfolio. You're like, I don't
Yeah.
exactly know what's going on, but I kind of like to see the bottom line. Am I up or am I down? And we're not financial advisors unless we are. And so, we just get a little app that sort of tells us, but there really isn't an app like that for our home. I mean, Zillow's probably the closest thing to it, but we know that the Zestimate, may or may
Yeah.
not be accurate. So this is, I think, where realtors can really demonstrate value is they can, if you're struggling, and I'm sorry to get on a bit of a soapbox, but I'm just curious to get your thoughts about if you didn't have any clients, let's say you were
Yeah.
just everything one, you were starting fresh, what would you do to generate business? I'm just curious.
Definitely. Well, I think, of course, your sphere of influence, it becomes neglected over time, or sometimes people just, they assume that this person knows me, they like me, why wouldn't they think of me or ask me or use me?
Right.
But people forget, or
Famous last words.
yeah, or people also think that, okay, maybe you are too busy, or maybe you're not
Yes.
doing, and I don't know. So you definitely have to be vocal. And I think more often than not, ask for the business. But I think you're right. How about hypothetically, let's say this is what I'm showing it's worth. What if we can get a little bit more? Would you sell then? And some people,
Right.
do have secondary homes, or they do want to maybe travel. I do know of some of my friends that are currently staying in, they have the flexibility with their jobs. So they're just staying in Airbnbs in different parts of the
Yeah.
country right now because they can. So, maybe you do have that flexibility, and, hey, if you don't have to worry about it, you can get this much more, money in your pocket. Would you? And I think a lot of people would actually say yes. Now, I mean,
You know
I
what's
guess.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I
No.
was just thinking. I was chatting with a friend of mine. I'll keep her name anonymous, but she's a realtor, very successful here in Chicago, and she was saying, she goes, I was just thinking about what's my number, and I said, well, what do you mean, what's your number? And she goes, what's my number that if somebody offered me, she was not looking to sell her home.
Yeah.
She lives in the North Shore, and she said, would it be 500,000 above asking? Would it be a million? Would it be whatever the number is?
Yeah.
Would it be 50,000 above what I think it's worth? Whatever that number is, that is kind of a fun exercise to do, because, like I had never thought of that. And I just bought a place a year ago, and I don't know what my number is, but that is kind of a fun exercise that you can do with people and say, just out of
Yeah.
curiosity, if you
Yeah.
were given a number, would that encourage you to maybe move, maybe rent, maybe buy another place, maybe move to another part of the country?
Totally.
So I imagine you'd be doing things like that as well.
Yeah. And I also think, just having those conversations almost maybe for fun, but if you have enough of them, you're probably going to have a few that are serious. And
Yes.
now you're talking real numbers and what their plan is. And now all of a sudden you're busy.
Yeah.
And so I think you have to create opportunity for yourself, but I think don't neglect your sphere of influence, because people aren't thinking about this all day long. They don't, what you're doing. So unless you're telling them, they forget until all of a sudden they have the need. So you have to
What
create
do you
the need
what do
sometimes.
you do to stay in touch? Because you talked about that sphere of influence is easy to neglect because you're caught up in the day to day, things are flying at you.
Yeah.
And sphere of influence, we'll talk about people. These are not current clients. These are just people that are close to you that hopefully would think to use you, but we want to remind them over time, consistently over time that, oh, by the way, when you're ready, I'm here. What are you doing to stay in touch with those people, or what advice do you have?
Definitely. So I will say, first of all, what I think most people have and can be an easy way to start is, social media. You're probably friends with most of the people who are in your sphere of influence, if not everybody, especially maybe even some people who are past clients or people who have referred you. So I think letting people know what you're doing, I think, and I'm trying to be better at this, but, creating video, everybody says it works. So, sometimes I think you got to step out of your comfort zone and just do it. But also aside from that, I also do, pop buys. I actually don't always go there, but there's ways, to do things that I mail things and just say, hey, here's like some type of gift, or it doesn't always have to be, or, a handwritten note or something, just to say, hey, and a Starbucks card. It's easy enough and, kind of gets people thinking about you again, without being too,
And
hey,
a
use
couple
me.
other things too. I want to talk about that because you're really, these are very, this is like straight out of the Brian Buffini playbook, which
Yeah.
is pop buys, handwritten notes, items of value.
Yeah.
What we're talking about really is earning someone's business. And I don't mean you have to buy someone's business by, giving them extravagant gifts. Of course, you do not have to do that, but you do have to earn someone's business. And especially people in your sphere, we think, well, those are people that know, like, and trust me already. Yes. And you still need to earn their business, which means
Yeah.
they already love you, and you have to remind them who you are and what you do.
Yeah.
And then, because people are people and we have a million things going on in our lives, and I always say the best assumption you can ever make is that everybody you know forgets that you're a realtor.
Yeah.
Just
I'd
assume
agree.
that, yeah. Yeah. So it's like, okay, well, that's kind of a bummer that no one's going to remember what I do for a living. Well, okay, but you know what? That's a pretty easy solution, right? I mean, Coca-Cola
Yeah.
certainly operates out of that same mentality of we better promote ourselves a lot, and you don't have to be the realtor that has the billboard on the side of the highway if that's not your personality. You don't have to have the bench back ads, or be in the
Yeah.
the grocery store shopping cart thing.
Yeah.
But you could just pick up the phone and contact, or text, or
Yeah.
send items of value. So I'm
Absolutely.
curious, what advice do you have after a sale? So this is a thing that I think realtors often really miss. Their previous clients just get completely lost. And
Totally.
so what are you doing after the sale, years down the road? So knowing that these people, I just bought them their forever home,
Yeah.
or rather they just bought their forever home. They moved in. They're not going anywhere for the next 20 years, but I still want to stay in touch. What are you doing to make sure that they don't forget about you for referrals or whatever?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will say what I always do is I do like a Christmas or like holiday gift to pretty much everybody. Everybody who buys with me gets like a customized ornament. And it's not as like Christmas either. I know some people say, oh, I might put it up on my shelf. I love that. I mean, and again, I feel like you don't have to spend money, but I do. I like to. And then also for my repeat people, I always do, or not my repeat people, people outside of my first time buyers that year, or who bought something that year. I always kind of have like a theme that I do. And like this past year, I did like customized mugs, but then I got like hot cocoa bombs and like gourmet popcorn and a customized box. And I really take my time with Christmas cards, and I write a personal message in every single one. It's just not sign my name, because I think that's important, because that's so easy to do. And I can't tell you how many people respond back to me, how thoughtful that was. Thank you for reaching out. Or, you're always at the forefront. If we ever know somebody who's going to buy or sell, we'll think of you. And that's just one of the things I do that year, or at the end of the year. But I definitely think even if you just send a Christmas card with a nice message, it also goes a long way. I also do, Starbucks gift cards too, to, depending on who everybody is and where they're at. Sometimes it doesn't always make sense to do the box. And sometimes I save that for more of my, I guess they say your A sphere, because I do Brian Buffini, so I do to separate it. But I like to hit everybody, because sometimes I don't always like categorizing my sphere, because sometimes just because you don't know somebody's your A sphere yet, and you don't want to lose anybody out. And something I also do, and I've started doing more and more lately, is I do send out a newsletter. And I know not everybody likes it, and it's kind of, sometimes just junk in your inbox. So I really try to really personalize it, write something personal about what's going on, kind of curate it a little bit. And I always try to have kind of a subject line that will stand out. I use an emoji. That's just who I am. So, I definitely try not to make it like a March newsletter, because I get a lot of those myself, and I don't care. And it's just, I know a lot of brokerages too have really kind of just like boilerplate stuff where it's like everybody can send out the same thing if they wanted. I always try to change it. So, and I will say that I've done that for this year. I've actually gotten a handful of business from it, who people said,
From the newsletter.
I got 2 listings and 1 buyer from actually my February and March newsletter.
And
And
what type of content? You were mentioning you weren't using the boilerplate content. Are you doing, what type of
well, I
content are you?
use some of it, because sometimes
Yeah.
it's great, but stuff that I think is kind of like a filler, kind of cheesy, I take out. But I look at what's going on right now. So people want to know, okay, spring's coming. How can you make your, and I don't know if I did do this or I'm planning on doing this, but for instance, how some quick, easy, inexpensive things to create curb appeal now that we're
Yeah.
heading into the warmer months, or things going on in the neighborhood that are more specific to the time. I also just try to write a message of just my general thoughts on what's going on, and I begin it with that. And sometimes I include just more pictures of that are personal. I really just try to make it maybe my personal newsletter, not so much this is my real estate newsletter, because I think it holds more value to people and they'll read it.
I think you're right. I wrote an article once called "Nobody Wants to Read Your Newsletter" for a magazine, because nobody wants to read a newsletter that isn't personalized, that doesn't have content that is of interest to that person that's being
Yes.
sent to. And realtors oftentimes, I mean, look, we're busy. Realtors are
Yeah.
busy. They don't have time to write. But you have that background. You have that broadcast journalism background. You're a creative person, so that fits neatly into your skill set. And so you get to sort of be creative in that sense and say,
Yes.
oh, by the way, maybe it's like it's National Women's History Month, and here's some cool things to know about that. And maybe it's even outside of the world of real estate, but it's important to you, and
Yeah.
you can express yourself that way. Or hey, as the as spring is rearing its head, now we can start talking about things like front doors are
Yeah.
becoming important, and things like that. And so
Definitely.
you can bring that into real estate. And I think that newsletters, it's such a great opportunity that I think realtors miss oftentimes, which is, I'm just going to pay a service to send out this
Yeah.
newsletter. And that's fine. And
Yeah.
honestly, it's fine. And no one's going to read it, but that's okay,
Yeah.
because at least they'll see your name. And that's
Yeah.
sort of level one. Level one is just, I'm going to
Yeah.
push something out there.
Exactly.
My name's at the bottom. Nobody cares, but it's better than nothing. Level two is, I'm going to put some actual content in here that I think is cool. And if I think it's cool, odds are my clients will be connect with it as well, because
Yeah.
like attracts like, mostly. So I think, and social media is the same way. I think we can
Yeah.
get really, you can be creative and fun and passionate without being salesy. And I think the
Yeah.
best realtors are. I think the best realtors that I've ever met are the least salesy people.
Yeah.
They're just extremely competent, and they're passionate, and they're like, well, here's what I do, here's how it works, and they talk about it. And I think that's we're sort of really fortunate that we have the ability to find yourself, and the technology exists to express yourself in a way that
Yes.
15 years ago, didn't really exist. And so now there's so many different ways where we can say, this is who I am and this is what I'm into. And I think people connect with that.
Exactly. And you just have to actually like do it. I find myself sometimes getting in my head, and I sometimes bring it back to even when I was in college. I was on Miami Television News, MTN. And I remember sometimes when we were getting ready for camera and they were like trying to test your microphone and they're like, say something, say something. I always remember thinking like, well, what should I say in my head? But I'm like, I'm supposed to be like an anchor. They don't know. I have to know. So sometimes it's just say it, say something, say anything. That's what they're looking for. And definitely to your point, to connect, because again, what differentiates realtors from each other is your unique personality, what your thoughts are, your opinions. I'm sure we collectively share a lot of the same thoughts and opinions, especially with this market, but your style, your attitude, your enthusiasm, I find myself able to adapt to different personality types. Maybe not everybody is. So sometimes I can be more buttoned up, or sometimes I will be a little more loose. And, either with my clothing or, just the discussions we have, maybe it's about life instead of just real estate. And other people just want to stick to real estate, which is totally fine too. But I always find, when I start thinking about it too much, just do it. Because at the end of the day, nobody's thinking about it that much where they're going to critique you to think that I think like you're awful. I would never use you. I think and I find this when I see other people doing it. Wow, they put themselves out there. That was cool. That was unique. I wish I could do that more. And then I think, well, why can't I? All I have to do is do it. So I think a lot of realtors just need to do it. Get out of your head. It's not that deep. It's not that serious. And that, you're just wanting people to kind of know who you are. And that's where you build the trust. You can build rapport and the credibility so they can use you. And everything else, like you said, can be learned, but to adapt your personality to connect with people and to know that, okay, I'm going to enjoy talking to this person on the phone for the next few months or whatnot. You got to show them who you are.
Yeah. My final question is, imagine you could go, I've never done this before, and I just think it would be interesting. Maybe we'll make it a recurring feature on the show if this, no pressure to make this go well.
Okay, good.
But I'm genuinely curious if you, now you've been doing this 12 years. So if you could go back to your rookie self and give your rookie self some advice, what would you tell your first year realtor self that of what you know now that she didn't know back then?
That is a great question. And what I think I would say is, for one, I always kind of felt in a way I connected better with strangers. I don't know if I felt like intimidated from other people or my sphere, or just a little bit that at the beginning I didn't know as much, obviously. So I didn't feel as confident. And until I felt confident, I didn't want to feel, I guess, embarrassed or something to people I already know.
I'm going to pause you for a second. This is a very, very common thing. So people get into real estate and, we read books and we go to trainings, and it's like, put your sphere of influence together.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing. And you should do that. And I'm in no way telling people what they should or shouldn't do. I'm just explaining that it is a very common occurrence where somebody goes, I don't really want to deal with my friends right away because I'm afraid I'm going to screw things up, but I don't really know that much. And I feel like maybe I'm not going to do a good job. This sort of imposter effect. It's not even an imposter effect. It's just, I just don't feel competent, and I don't want to, and you're my best friend. And what if I screw something up? So this is really, really important. So go ahead. I'm sorry. I just wanted to pause because this is a big thing.
Totally. But I think I would definitely go back and put myself out there to the people who know, love, and care about me way more so. I mean, it was great that I was able to connect with, I feel like, so many people who didn't know me and really build my business to where it is. But I also, if I put as much effort into that to the people who, I already know, my sphere of influence, I maybe would have it would have been a little bit easier. I don't know that it would ever be easy, but maybe it would have been a little bit easier because was kind of, they always say, don't be a secret agent. And I kind of was, because I did feel this little tinge of embarrassment because
Yeah.
what if they ask me this and I don't know? And, almost to strangers, it's like, they don't know that I don't know. So I felt more confident to tell them. Whereas, my friends and family knew I was just really starting to get into real estate. So there was probably things that I didn't know, and I still don't know things, and I'm still learning. But I think that now I would realize that, you need people that who know you to help you. People generally do. You just got to ask. And I didn't really want to ask. And I would definitely go back and I would ask and I would let people know. And I would have more of those real and genuine conversations with them. Like, hey, I know that I'm new and maybe you have some
Perfect.
questions about that, but I
I love
also
that.
have, family who's in this, who've been in a long time in the support of a brokerage. So I can find out the answer, but hey, would you give me a shot?
Do you
And
know that what you just said is I personally I love this honesty and vulnerability. And again, I know we're kind of going back in
yeah,
time, but the willingness to be vulnerable is
yeah,
an exceedingly attractive quality that and I think it's because vulnerability is so scary. I think
yeah,
that it is so difficult for us to say, here's something that I feel very exposed, and I feel
yes,
like I'm letting you down, but I do have a solution. So, hey,
yeah,
I'm new. I just got my license, and or I'm in the first few years of my business. There's going to be questions I am sure that you will ask me that I won't immediately have the answer for. But what I will promise you, Mr. and Mrs. So and so, is
yeah,
that I will get the answer for you, and I will come back to you with the answer within a day or so or whatever.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
the funny thing about working with friends and in your sphere is those are the people, I mean, just sort of practically, those are the people that are going to forgive you the most anyway. So even
Yes.
if you do screw up, they're most likely. But I think having that sort of vulnerable conversation, like you said, I would love the opportunity to earn your business. And I
Yeah.
get it. I'm not 20 years in the business, but maybe that's a benefit in a way because I will work maybe harder than somebody who's so
Yeah.
busy. Um,
Totally.
but
And I
I,
have the time to give you that specialized
yeah,
individual attention.
yeah,
And I want this and I want to prove myself. So allow me. Whereas somebody who's maybe been in the business a longer time and or maybe has more clients, they just can't do that. So sometimes
yeah.
you might actually have a way better experience anyways. But yeah, vulnerability is hard and it's still hard. I'm still trying to put myself
Of
out there.
course, of
But
course it is. It's hard because people can hurt you with it.
yeah,
I mean, people can reject vulnerability.
yes,
They can damage you with it. But what most people end up doing with vulnerability is that it actually vulnerability leads to intimacy, and intimacy
yes,
is what we're sort of bred for as as a species. This idea of we're intimate people, and so this idea that we want to be with people who we trust, we know, we like,
yes,
and the surest way to do that is to open up with of course appropriate boundaries,
yeah,
obviously, making sure that you do have personal and professional boundaries set, but being able to say, here's what I know and here's what I don't know and here's what I'm going to do about what I don't know.
yeah,
And I think most people go, okay, that makes sense to me. We don't expect perfection out of anyone other than ourselves
yeah,
mostly. We don't expect our friends to be perfect, and our clients don't expect us, but they do expect us to work hard for them.
yeah,
And that's all I think that is really required. Or that's the most important thing that's required. So this has been such a fun conversation. I'm really
yeah.
grateful to Brittany for going a little deeper than sometimes we do on our show here. But I think it's important because what we're dealing with throughout, whether it's you're buying a toaster or $1 million home, we're
Yeah,
talking about people making buying decisions that are, and of course in the case of a primary residence, this is a very emotional decision.
it is.
It's one of the largest, maybe the largest financial decision at that time that person might be making. It's what is it? Is it buying a home, kids in school or
Yeah,
college, and then retirement? Those are kind of the big ones. And so this is something that if you can hone your skills and be willing to connect with your clients at a deeper level, you're going to really have some raving fans. And I think also, the being very disciplined, as Brittany mentioned, about always consistently not neglecting the people in your life, because
Yeah.
again, it's a relationship. And if you don't, just like anything, if you neglect anything in your life, it's going to suffer. It's just going to suffer. So you are obviously doing an amazing job. I'm
Thank you.
very excited to continue to watch your progression as you continue
Appreciate
to do
it.
more and more. But if there's anyone out there who is either interested in buying, selling, renting, whether it's residential, I know you also do commercial,
Yes.
whether it's the city or the suburbs, and is looking to work with a top realtor, what's the best way someone should reach out to you?
Absolutely. Well, they can definitely call me. My cell phone is usually I am a person who answers her phone and I always get back to people. So my cell phone number is 630-936-2930. Or you can reach me on social media. Like you said, my handle is on Instagram at realtor.brittany with a TTANY or Facebook. And I'm under Brittany Simon. That was my maiden name. Or email me, brittany.simon@compass.com. But I always answer my phone. So if I don't get back to you the second you call or text, it will be same day for sure.
Yeah, and definitely check out Brittany's website. She has a really cool logo. I'm a big fan of the Brittany Simon logo. So
Oh,
visit
thank
her
you.
on her website, which is BrittanySimonGroup.com. Again, Brittany is
Yes.
BRI two T's ANY, BRITTANY, SimonGroup.com, and then Brittany.realtor. Realtor.Brittany on Instagram. We will have links to those in the show notes, so you don't have to type that in. We'll have direct links. Brittany, thank you so much for being
Oh
on
my
our show.
goodness.
We really,
Thank
really
you.
appreciate your time. This was a lot of fun for us. And maybe you and I one day will go back to our alma mater,
Yes.
and visit, because Brittany and I were saying she has not been back since college. I don't know if we said that on the show or off air, but I've only been back once. So we're probably both due for a visit
Overdue for
at
sure.
some point. And I do want to find out where you worked as a server in college, because I'm curious if I frequented one of those establishments.
Yes.
Not, it wasn't when you were there, of course, but anyway, on behalf of Brittany and myself, we want to thank our audience for continuing to listen and support our show. Please tell a friend. Think of one other realtor that really needs to hear what Brittany talked about today, specifically around how to get offers noticed, some good marketing ideas as well, and just constant communication with your clients. And send them a link to our website. Our website is keepingitrealpod.com. And every episode we've ever done can be streamed right there, or just have them pull up a podcast app, search for Keeping It Real, and hit that subscribe button. And on behalf of Brittany and myself, we thank our audience. And on behalf of our audience, we thank Brittany for her time today.
Thank you.
We will see everybody on the next episode. And thanks, Brittany. It was a real pleasure.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. We'll see everyone next time.